Welcome to the EduTrends presented by the Institute for the Future of Education. This is a TED Sounds podcast, the official podcast of Tecnológico de Monterrey. I am José Pepe Escamilla, Associate Director of the Institute for the Future of Education. Today's guest is Diego Arambula, Vice President for Education Transformation at the Carnegie Foundation. It's a pleasure to have you here, Diego.
It's so nice to be here with you, Pepe.
I would like to start with a sort of a personal question about your career focus. How you decided to work in education, in transforming education, and how did your journey bring you to the Carnegie Foundation?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the story to tell, mostly because it allows me to talk about my parents, who are amazing. My dad was the first in his family born here in the U.S. He was born in Brownsville, Texas. He's the fifth of seven. And he and my mom have spent their entire lives working to make my hometown of Fresno, California, a better place. And especially a better place for those who came from similar backgrounds to the ones that my dad came from. So he used education to transform his own life. The first in his family to go to college. He then went and got a master's degree and a law degree and used that to come home and represent farm workers as a lawyer. When I was a kid, I watched him then get into local elected office. So when all of my siblings and I were in public schools, he joined the school board. He then went on to the county board and was a California State Assembly member. I knew from watching them that our job is to try and make other people's lives better in whatever way we could. I thought that would be through politics and elected office. So I got my degree in political science. I went right to Washington, D.C., only to learn that Washington, D.C. is not full of my dad. And it's full of a lot of other people who weren't trying to make the change he was. And so through that, I felt deeply committed to still trying to make positive change, found my way into schools because I love kids. And knew that it was an impactful way to make a difference. Unfortunately, so many of our schools that worked for me when I was growing up, that worked for my dad, don't work for far too many students. And so I found my way to schools as a way to make change, and then figured out if you really care about changing at scale for the students who are furthest from opportunity, you have to be committed to transforming those schools. And so I've been on that journey now for almost 21 years. Got to be a high school teacher in a school that was reimagining what was possible. I was a high school principal. I've run a nonprofit organizing young people and families to unlock demand for reimagined schools. I worked for a national nonprofit and most recently came to the Carnegie Foundation, where we are deeply committed to moving beyond the Carnegie Unit, which conflates time and learning. The mission of the Carnegie Foundation is to transform education so that every student can lead a healthy, dignified, fulfilling life. The way we are committed to doing that now is to transform both what's happening in high schools and in the post-secondary space. To really think about how we can not just improve, but transform those spaces so that they are the most vital engine toward economic opportunity that they can be. And in so many ways, this feels like the culmination of what my parents started me on almost 4.5 decades ago of trying to make a positive change, doing so in a way that's really extremely focused on those who most need us, and doing so in one of the spaces, public education, that desperately is in need of some reimagining, as we've been relatively stuck for a long time, running the same kinds of schools that my dad went to and their parents before them. So I'm really excited to be here at the Carnegie Foundation. We're 120 years old, but as our president, Tim Knowles, likes to say, we are a 120-year-old startup. Really beginning to rethink in this moment what is deeply needed. And so it brings with it a deep legacy that I'm proud to continue, but also uh, an urgency and nimbleness that a startup has. So really excited to be here, uh, doing that work in high school and post-secondary, and really excited to be here talking with you about it.
Thank you, Diego. Very inspiring story, and I also can relate. I am myself first generation. My parents studied only at the sixth level of elementary education, and I also am a product of public education, at least until the high school. After that, I had a scholarship to go to Tec de Monterrey, and I also have this feeling that public education is not offering the same possibilities of social mobility, economical mobility for the general population in Mexico and around the world. So I share this concern that you have, and thanks for sharing. Now moving to the foundation, that is, as you say, is a very old startup. I understand that one of the new things that you have done is the students access and learning classification program. This program that has been uh, naming some colleges and universities part of this, and that now we have 478 colleges and universities there. Why do we need this? Why Carnegie Foundation went into that uh, direction?
Yeah. So forgive me because I'm a former high school history teacher. So sometimes I can go back and ground in the history, but it feels important to start. So in 1973, the Carnegie Foundation began to classify all institutions of higher education here in the US. And the original intent was simply to ensure that researchers could compare like institutions so that we weren't comparing Harvard University to Fresno City College. And rather we were comparing similar size, similar orientation, similar goals. It was meant for researchers and policymakers to direct their energy and understanding. That was the original set of classifications from 1973. With small tweaks, that has remained, where most folks, if you are outside of a very small research community, where most folks know of the Carnegie classifications is whether or not someone is a high intensity research university here in the US called an R1. And so there became a race for some universities to become R1 universities, heavy research universities, and we also classified R2. A few years ago, we decided to revamp both how we organized those universities in the institutional classification, how we designated research universities, and then we added, importantly, the student access and earnings classification. This measures how universities are doing on providing access to the university for the students in their region and how they're doing on changing their lifetime earnings potential. Um, it was very important for us to do this to move the classification from something that mattered exclusively for a small research community and just described what kind of university they were, to really prioritize the outcomes of those universities. As I said, we care deeply at the Carnegie Foundation, I believe you do too, that higher education can and should be a vital engine for economic opportunity. We believe that when done right, it is. It does so much more for the students it serves, but it certainly should be a jumping off point to ensure that students can um, live a healthy, fulfilling, dignified life. And that solid foundation economical base is a big part of that. So this is the first time that we've measured for every university in the United States who is opening up access and who is changing those lifetime earnings. And through doing that, we've identified 478 universities. They are big and small. They are community colleges, so primarily 2-year. They are 4-year. They are special focused. They are every brand. And it's been amazing to see just the number of universities who are popping onto our radar doing great work. And so we're very excited to have this outcomes focused classification for the first time. And we're very excited to see what this might do in allowing researchers, policymakers, funders to begin to encourage more universities to move in this direction.
It's a very interesting approach to let the public and also founders or philanthropists understand where are those opportunity colleges. But if you're a leader in a university, and how can you make sure that what you do in your university leads to real economic and social mobility, especially for those underserved students?
Yeah, we're the new classifications just came out in April. Here we sit in heading into November. So we are beginning to do a lot of the research now on who has been thriving, who is showing up in this new classification. And we're beginning to ask these exact questions. So I'll have more to share as we conduct more and more research, but I can tell you some early insights that we're beginning to see and we're excited to learn more about. Um, we're beginning to see that universities who are prioritizing helping build social capital and connection, who are helping their students get out into the communities, begin to forge some of those relationships, get early insights into the type of work they're doing, that those are really impactful. We certainly are seeing that universities who do a great job of retaining and graduating their students. um, our measure looks at all students who began at the school, not just those who graduate. And so we're seeing and we know that the lifetime earnings potential for those with a degree is far exceeds that who have some college but no degree. So those who have found really impactful um, mentoring programs and advising programs that are retaining students have been very effective. And for many of our universities, what we're seeing is very creative ways to provide access to students who most need these universities, and um, so this has been just we're seeing some great examples here in particular states of direct admissions of work to ensure that students are finding their way into these universities in the first place is happening. So we're really excited to learn more about how folks are increasing access and especially how they're increasing the earnings potential for students, and we're just early into that journey.
Thank you very much, Diego. I we will be very curious and to learn and to see how this evolves and what are the findings that you have. I would like to move now to another area of work of the Carnegie Foundation, which is the future of high school network. This move towards competency-based learning that connects with the changes that we need in higher education. How is it working?
Yeah. So again, forgive me that I'll do a little history before I jump into the specific answer. So in 1906, the Carnegie Foundation created the Carnegie Unit. It was originally created for higher education, but has seeped into high schools and K-12 across the US. The Carnegie Unit was originally developed to determine pensions for university professors. And then it became the single best way to organize learning, what we considered learning. And so we said if you have a certain amount of time with a teacher of record in a particular subject, that counts as a unit of learning. That conflation of time and learning began in 1906 and has been pernicious and has stuck ever since. So, in most schools, what that looks like is about 1 hour a day for one subject for 1 year. And that will earn you a unit of learning in high school. This now controls how our high schools are organized, how we assess students, what gets assessed, what goes onto a transcript, what gets handed off to post secondary, how we accredit those universities, how financial aid works. Every single piece of this is dictated by the Carnegie Unit, which again conflates time and learning. And yet we know deeply that just because a student sits in one class for 1 hour for 1 year does not mean they've actually learned the thing. And so that whole fundamental premise is broken. And yet we can't simply burn it down without finding what is the new architecture of school, because this has become the architecture of how our schools work. And so the future of high school network is deeply committed to working alongside high school systems across the United States who are trying to build a new architecture for learning, a new architecture that broadens the set of goals, the aperture of goals around which we care about, that is committed to a new set of learning experiences that prioritize the learning and deep experiential, rigorous learning, not time-based learning, and signals that learning in whole new ways to students, back to families, to post-secondary, and to the workforce. And so it's really exciting that we're getting to work with 24 high school systems from across the country. We've done this work in partnership with the XQ Institute, and we're really excited about finding and unearthing these high school systems in big states, in big districts, in small rural areas, in Republican-dominated states, in Democratic-dominated states, and everywhere in between. And what we're seeing is that these future-focused places are trying to create a new architecture. And so we are deeply committed to supporting them in that work and learning deeply what does it take, what's enabling them to move beyond the Carnegie Unit, what's still holding them back, and then using all of that to both elevate their stories and then hopefully create more enabling conditions for more high school systems to begin to move beyond the Carnegie Unit at scale. And if we are successful in this, this future of high school network is 2 years. We'll be together for 2 years, but the work of moving beyond the Carnegie Unit, we believe, will take a decade, if not more. And if we're successful in this, we believe that we'll begin to see a whole lot more high schools who have created sustainable, scalable models where students are engaging deeply, progressing upon readiness rather than upon time, finding opportunities to engage outside of the school building for us to validate that learning and value and capture that learning, and to do it outside of traditional disciplines where it's just one subject for one period of time at a time. And so it's an exciting piece of work to get to see real models happening today across the country, and especially exciting to begin to learn what it's going to take to spread that work more broadly.
Oh, it's a very interesting work, Diego, of this future of high school networks. I'm trying to imagine how this network works, and what comes to mind is a space where you run a certain number of pilot and research impact measurement, and you try to see if those pilots give evidence of something that worked that eventually you can try to escalate, or is this something that they are doing in a different way?
Yeah. If I haven't sent this to you already, I'll send you. We've created and put out an R&D agenda, and so we've alongside educators and researchers and families and students, we identified 8 different areas that we know schools really need to focus on, regardless of how they're moving beyond the Carnegie Unit. All of these schools will be working on, as an example, conditions for educator excellence. How do we prepare our educators to really thrive in internships, to really thrive in a competency-based or project-based model. In any one of those, we're going to have to really think about how do we get teachers ready? How do we get them bought in? How do we move the needle? So we've looked at and pulled together those 8 plus 2 foundational, which is policy and AI and infrastructure. All of our research that we're conducting over the next set of years will be okay as Aldine Independent School District, an amazing school district in Texas, who has created an amazing healthcare academy. We are not looking to replicate the healthcare academy. As much as we're looking to learn deeply, what did Aldine do to build the right culture, to empower their educators, to create the kinds of learning management system and digital infrastructure needed such that what students were doing at the hospital could be conveyed back to the district and then to families. So we're trying to understand and research through that lens because we believe that's what's going to allow this work to root, to sustain, and then to eventually scale.
That's a very interesting way of working, and I will be eager to take a look at that document you're gonna send me. So traditionally, the K-12 system is more prone to innovations like this. But what about higher education? What can we learn in higher education from this high school network?
Yeah. So in addition to serving in this role here at the Carnegie Foundation, I also sit on the board of trustees for the California State University system, the largest public university system here in the United States. And I can tell you these changes that we're thinking about in high school are desperately needed in the university space as well. We need to create more experiential learning, more competency-based learning. We need to uproot the Carnegie Unit, um, and we need to find new ways to signal beyond merely a degree at the end, what it is that our students have learned, such that they can thrive in the world beyond. And so I think there's a lot to be learned. I think much of it can be mirrored in the same kinds of learning. You know, a 19-year-old does not learn all that differently from an 18-year-old. And all of the research we're finding is that for lifelong learning, so much of this learning is mirrored in just great human development. And so we're really hopeful that the work we're beginning in the Future of High School Network can and will be mirrored in the university space. Um, so in one sense, I just think there's so much that needs to be replicated across. There's another piece, which is we need to, at the moment, these feel like very, at least here in the US, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but in the US, these are entirely distinct systems that do not have a good way of speaking to each other. So and thus the Carnegie Unit only gets more cemented because the ways in which high school and the university speak to each other is a transcript. And that transcript is a set of courses with a set of grades, which is an incredibly simplistic boiling of what that student is actually capable of and what they would need to thrive and flourish. And so if we could find a way to more appropriately capture what young people are truly capable of, where they still need to grow, and if that was more seamless between high school and post-secondary and then into the workforce, just imagine how much more we could identify and capture talent, which is all around us, and how much more we could allow students to thrive and to grow. Rather, we capture learning in one place, boil it down to one page of a transcript, hand that off to a university, and then say, good luck getting to know this student and then trying to figure out how to help them thrive. And then the same thing happens at the end of university as we hand them out into the working world. And if we could find better ways to blur those lines, to better communicate and signal, I think we would realize how much more talent is around us in young people and in our communities, and uh, we could really help more people thrive and flourish.
Yes. Yes, in our case in Latin America, we lose a lot of students in high school because already high school starts to be a different system than the rest of the first 9 years of education. And then in the transition from high school of universities, we lose also on the first semester a lot of students. And in fact, um, there's this, I would say, double assumption. One is what the students from the previous level have to know when they arrive, or what are the competencies they master. And also the assumption that all of the students that come from a certain system have the same level. So you don't take also individual differences, or individual differences of systems of schools, but also individual difference of each of the learners. So we have to take everything into account. No, so we are working now in a new project with universities, so that I think there are a lot of things that relate to what you are doing. So we're thinking of a sort of a playbook for a university to become a university that society needs, that is has meeting these goals of society, which are related to being more connected, more relevant, but not only for industry or society, but also for the students. And that means putting the student at the center and committing to the success of that students in the school, in the university, but also for the rest of their lives. So how you become the educational partner of that student and your extended community for the rest of your life. So it's a university conceiving herself as itself in English, I think is it itself as a lifelong learning engine, no, as a lifelong learning organization.
I love that idea. I really love that idea of this should not be constrained to 4 years to a set of time. It should be a lifelong relationship in which the learning I need today, I'm able to access. And then as I need more, I'm able to plug back in those relationships. And underneath all of that is a deep seated belief that you're sharing that we at Carnegie completely agree with, that the job of high school doesn't end when a student graduates. It's to ensure that they are successful beyond. The job of a university does not end with a diploma. It
Yes,
should lead to them being active, engaged citizens, to being
yes.
engaged in well off in their economic life, and so we deeply believe that
Mhm.
universities and high schools need to be thinking well beyond the boundaries of
Yeah.
end of the time a student spends with them.
And also, you cannot say that you're an inclusive university only because you give scholarships. No, it's much more than you have to do to set the starting level. No, at the same part. And with this discussion, I would like to ask you a last question for you. If you think on a window of time in the future, around 5 or 10 years, what do you think that universities' role will be in driving equality of opportunities, inclusion, and that kind of change that the society needs?
Yeah. Sometimes I love thinking on this time horizon because right now can feel so challenging. This moment we're in can feel so challenging. So it's great to think ahead 5 to 10 years. I've seen very firsthand in my own family the transformative power that great higher education can provide. I believe deeply that it can continue to do the same, but I think there needs to be a laser focus on ensuring that um, we are providing these opportunities to all students who need it, that there is talent all around us, even if by some traditional metrics we're not seeing uh, uh, student readiness. I think it's incumbent on us to really think, how are we engaging, supporting, and raising the bar for those students. So I think ensuring that we maintain our focus on providing access, and to the point you just made, that that access is not just getting them in the door, but it's also then supporting them in all the ways they need to thrive, not by lowering the bar, but by providing more supports to get them to a maintained higher bar. I think that's possible to increase access and to remain focused. I think it's very possible for us to get universities more focused on what happens beyond graduation to ensure that more students make it to graduation and then think about what happens beyond graduation. And I think if we see that, we will see post-secondary be a significantly more vital engine of economic opportunity. Um, and at least here in the United States, there is a big question at the moment of whether a degree is worth it. And I think if we do this, and I believe universities are beginning to get focused on it, the new classifications we've put out are but one part of that. But I think more and more universities are. And if we do that, I think that question falls by the wayside as more people begin to realize, oh, we're seeing just the power this has for my neighbors, for my community, and we see that transformation happening time and again. We believe that in the next 10 years or so, we can double the number of students here in the US who are in opportunity colleges and universities. Right now, there are about 2.7 million. We think it's within universities' power to double that and to get more than 5.5 million students attending opportunity colleges and universities in the next 10 or so years. And we're excited to be in the first year of that journey. But I'm excited to be with you 10 years from now to see whether that holds. But we believe it's truly possible.
Me too, Diego, and I would like to see where this leads, and also be part of this journey if there's a possibility. And I want to thank you for taking your time, your generosity to share your insights about your work in Carnegie Foundation, and also about this personal perspective on the future of education. I'm sure that this will be of interest for our audience of EduTrends podcast, and I hope to see you soon in the future too.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.